Happy Victory Monday and welcome to 580 Sports Talk. Brendan Dworzinski and Dan Lucero here with you from 3 until 5:30 today. We are off a little bit early due to Kansas State basketball as the Cats open up the Cayman Islands Classic against the Rams of Rhode Island. So that's coming up tonight. So we're off just a little bit early, so we've got a full show to pack into a slightly shorter time frame tonight. We appreciate you joining us on this Monday. We've got plenty of football to get to, and we're talking American football, not necessarily international football. Team USA just had a draw with Wales. I know Jake was live reacting during Mic'd Up today, Fulton as well. We were watching. The game went final while we were changing over in the studio from one show to the next. Dan, instant reaction.
Draw is not a bad result, but it does mean you're probably going to have to run up the score in Iran and not get embarrassed by England, because chances are that's going to be the result. England look like they're going to run the rack. Iran look like they're going to lose to everybody. So it's probably going to come down to goal differential between Team USA and Wales. So you're going to want to score a bunch against Iran, but first things first on Black Friday, don't get overrun by the English. And if you can get a point off of England, you're probably in really good shape. Also, Fuego soccer take. Do you have a second for a Fuego soccer take?
This is equally your air and mine.
Christian Pulisic, Mr. Great American Hope, the best player America's ever produced. Bum. He stinks. His crosses look like Zach Wilson trying to throw flat routes in the Jets-Patriots game yesterday.
Topical.
He couldn't connect with anybody on a cross. Terrible. I know he assisted on the only goal, but not a playmaker, not a threat anywhere near the goal. Bum. Stinks. Get him out of my face. Put somebody on the left wing who can play.
To quote Screamin' A. Smith, no disrespect, but this guy is a certified bum. Can't play. We are going to get to American football throughout the show today.
That's all. I'm done. I'm done.
That has been talking World Cup. The Chiefs won last night. Crazy game last night against the Chargers. We've got full reaction to that coming up here in just a moment. Matt Verderame of Fansided.com is going to stop by coming up at the bottom of the hour for our weekly recap of the NFL weekend. And boy, was there a lot going on in the NFL this weekend. 4 o'clock hour, heavy on the college football per usual. K-State, dominant win. Well, I don't know about dominant, but an impressive win nonetheless over West Virginia in a game that I'm not all that upset about the defense. I know some folks are. Frankly, I'm really not, and we'll talk about why coming up at 4 o'clock. KU suffers its worst loss of the season. Bad time for it. Really unfortunate effort all the way around. I've also, as we enter Sunflower Showdown, or as Jesse Newell would say, Clash on the Caw weekend, I think I have a hot take about the rivalry game that maybe it's not super hot, but as someone who went to one school but doesn't have a whole lot of hate for the other, it's like a fairly lukewarm, simmering take on the rivalry, which of course we'll be talking about throughout this shortened week of 580 Sports Talk. We're off Thursday and Friday because of Thanksgiving. We will also get to the rest of the college football weekend. We've got What Is Wrong With You, headlines, good, bad, and ugly recap from the weekend. It's all coming up on this edition of 580 Sports Talk. We would love for you to be a part of the show, per usual, on the Big O Tires text line. 785-272-9429 is the text line number. And, of course, you can chime in on our YouTube comments as well on our YouTube live stream. Sports on 580 WIBW is the YouTube account. Head on over. You can watch the stream. You can chime in with comments. You can just simply admire how Dan and I look today. I really need a shave. It's pretty bad, actually. But other than that, feel free to admire in any way that you'd like. Let's get to the Chiefs. Let's get to their win over the Chargers last night. That game did not go as dominantly in favor of the Chiefs as I expected it to. And you were spot on all week last week that Chargers were going to play up in this game because they always play the Chiefs tough. I personally think that's a sign of bad coaching. And we knew Anthony Lynn was a bad coach for a couple years. I think we have come to realize Brandon Staley is probably more than likely in over his head as a head coach as well. If you only play your A game 2 games a year and going into the season, everyone can point to exactly which 2 games those are, you probably have some sort of coaching or culture problem. I think that's fair to say. Chargers offense has been the dregs for way too much of this season, given who their quarterback is. Last night, they're throwing bombs down the field. Mike Williams went full Megatron Calvin Johnson mode like he always does. They actually used Keenan Allen as a deep threat, which they damn near never do. But it still ended in predictable fashion with the Chiefs scoring twice in the fourth quarter, including once in, I believe it ended up being, what would that have been, a minute, 15 seconds for their last scoring drive. 6 plays, 64 yards, moved right down the field, scored pretty easily. Kelce couldn't be stopped. Mahomes had another great game. It was both unbelievable that it could happen again and entirely believable that in this rivalry, it would happen again. I mean, that's been the state of the Chiefs versus the rest of the AFC West since Mahomes took over, but really since Andy Reid took over the franchise back in 2013. You almost run out of superlatives at some point. Like Mahomes, awesome. Travis Kelce, the first ballot Hall of Famer, awesome again. The defense, which I thought was not very good early in the game, stepped up, made big plays, had 5 sacks for the second week in a row. Chris Jones right now, and I haven't seen the latest odds, he should be near the very top of the conversation for Defensive Player of the Year, the way he is playing right now. He has been absolutely incredible over the last few weeks. We've talked about how good Mahomes has been during this now 4-game winning streak. Chris Jones has been almost as dominant on the defensive side. He cannot be stopped, and it's not just with sacks. It's not just with pressures. He is doing so much. The play yesterday where he blew up the pulling guard and threw off what could have been a big gain for Austin Eckler into a gain of 1 or 2 yards on the outside. He's been tremendous. The defense stepped up when it mattered. I thought the offense was awesome for the most part in the game. I know it was only a 3-point win, but it's hard to complain after your 14th consecutive road win over a division rival.
Real quick, Chris Jones plus 3,000 at FanDuel to win NFL Defensive Player of the Year. That is the 5th best odds behind Micah Parsons, Matthew Judon, Nick Bosa, and Max Crosby, in case anyone other than Brendan was curious.
Yeah, so those guys, and the full list again, Matthew Judon, edge guy, Max Crosby, edge guy, and who was before them?
Nick Bosa.
Nick Bosa, edge guy.
And Parsons, edge guy, too.
Yeah, Parsons, Micah Parsons is like positionless. He's unbelievable. We'll talk a little bit about him coming up with Matt
He's
Verderame
the predator is what he is.
He is unbelievable.
Anyway,
But nobody else is doing that from the inside.
No.
Those are all guys who are coming off the edge. And that doesn't take away from it, but still.
And it's opening up stuff for other guys. I mean, Mike Dana had 2 sacks last night.
Yeah, he did.
That's a product of you can't double or help on anybody else on that front line because you have to account for Chris Jones. We talked last week about the Chargers up front and how their offensive line had played really well. They were allowing the fewest sacks in the NFL coming in. I even said, I don't think that's how you're going to beat the Chargers. If you're going to slow the Chargers down, it's not going to be because you beat them with your pass rush. It's going to be because you were disciplined, you tackled well. And I think Steve Spagnuolo and I were on the same wavelength a little bit last night because early on, the Chiefs didn't do a whole lot of blitzing and they sat in a lot of zone coverage, and Justin Herbert picked it apart. Justin Herbert came out and had some downfield threats and utilized them. Joshua Palmer in a role that much better suited him.
Yep.
Mike Williams only made 1 catch, but it was a doozy. Keenan Allen is a big-time player and helped their offense a lot, opened things up a lot for their passing game. It was a different passing game than we've seen the Chargers have for most of this season. Credit to the Chargers, credit to Herbert for making that happen, and of course them getting some injured guys back helped them in that capacity a lot. So then the Chiefs made an adjustment, said, all right, now we need to get after Herbert. And they got after him. 5 sacks. Willie Gay had a big sack in the fourth quarter, led to a 3rd and long that the Chargers ended up converting, but that was a big play. Obviously, Chris Jones's sacks were pretty important plays in the game. So credit to the Chiefs, who we were so worried about when it came to their pass rush back in July, back in August. They are now 4th in the NFL as a team in sacks.
Hell, back in the game against the Bills.
Yeah.
Remember what our reaction was? Like, hey,
oh,
the offense will be fine, but man, they've got to figure out something with the pass rush. Ever since that game, they've been awesome.
Yeah, I mean, they've been terrific. They are getting after the quarterback, and Chris Jones is the fulcrum of that. He's the one. He's sort of the key that unlocks everything else. He is the sun, and everything else on the defense kind of orbits around the thing he can do. He is similar in that way on the defensive side to what Travis Kelce is to the Chiefs' passing game. For all the talk about how great Derwin James is, and he is, about how much success he's had in his career against Travis Kelce, and he has, about how much success he was having against Kelce in this game, which he was. At the end, Kelce made a play to beat Derwin James. Patrick Mahomes found him for that game-winning touchdown on the same exact play that won the overtime game in Los Angeles last season. Same tight end crosser concept. A little bit more window dressing before the play. A little bit different personnel, obviously, but same concept. Man beater. Kelce, get open. Mahomes hits you in stride, and that was your ball game. Because even with the skeleton crew that the wide receiver group became last night, with no Juju and Mecole Hardman coming in, Kadarius Toney played a handful of snaps, so they got one target, went out with the hamstring injury. You've got Justin Watson and Marquez Valdez-Scantling playing wide receiver 1, which is, because he only had one catch last night, you can see that's not a role for him.
No.
Sky Moore and his coming out party. But the fulcrum is always Kelce. He's the one who makes it work. He's the one that they put in motion to figure out whether they're in man or zone. He's the one that dictates matchups everywhere else along the field, even if he's not the one who gets the ball. He is the sun for this Chiefs passing game. And then you have the best player in football distributing the rock. I mean, I know that the tendency is always, and this goes for any sport, you look at the guy who is the best player in the league and say, well, we can't give them the MVP every year. We can't give LeBron the MVP or Michael Jordan the MVP every year. Let's give it to Karl Malone. We can't.
And I took that personally.
Yeah, exactly. Like, the debate always happens this way. We can't give it to the best player every year. And the MVP then becomes a narrative award. And I guess in ways it always has been. But Patrick Mahomes, in addition to being the best player in football, he's now got the narrative portion of that award all but sewn up.
Yep.
That they're 8-2 and arguably a better offensive football team without the guy who, in a new setting, has arguably been the best wide receiver in football this year. It is a tremendous testament to how great Mahomes is. And even Andy Reid is saying in the post-game remarks about, hey, let's enjoy this while we have it. Make sure you enjoy this while you have it. Make sure you don't take this for granted. Special performance by Mahomes. Thought it was the most balanced the offense had been all season. Isaiah Pacheco goes for 100 yards. It felt like complimentary run and pass football. Maybe a little bit by necessity because, again, you're down to a limited selection of wide receivers, so you're playing a lot of 3 tight end personnel. When you got 3 tight ends in the game, you better be able to run the football, and the Chiefs were, and that's a credit to them. It was a balanced effort, but it was the stars that shone, the best players who made it happen. And in games like this that are close, games on the road, games against an opponent that has given you their best shot, an opponent that has played you as tough as anybody else in football, with the exception of maybe the Titans. Nobody plays the Chiefs tougher than the Chargers on balance in the Mahomes/Reid era. When all of that is against you, and when you're down in the fourth quarter, down entering the fourth quarter, it's still your stars. They're the ones who make the difference. And Jones is playing at the highest level, and Kelce is playing at the highest level, and Mahomes is the highest level. And that's why you win that football game.
And that is also why Mahomes right now is minus money to win the MVP. He is far and away the favorite to win the MVP right now. And we were on that a little bit earlier than some places. And there's really not an argument at this point. The Bills won big this weekend. Josh Allen didn't look great. I do think he's being hampered by that injury quite a bit. Jalen Hurts had a big play against Indianapolis to seal the win for the Eagles, or to steal the win really for the Eagles. But I think he would be a distant third right now. I mean, you can make the argument that, assuming offensive player of the year goes to a non-quarterback, which I think it should, assuming a quarterback wins MVP, you could make an argument for the Chiefs to get MVP, offensive player of the year, and defensive player of the year this year. There's at least an argument out there. And that would probably be repetitive to a point where voters wouldn't want to do it. But Patrick Mahomes should win MVP. Chris Jones is absolutely near the top of the list for defensive player of the year. And you can make an argument for Travis Kelce as well at offensive player of the year. He is unbelievable, the level he's playing at right now. By the way, you mentioned MVS and the fact he only had one catch. You know who did have a key downfield block on the game-winning touchdown? MVS. That's what he does. He is a very team-oriented wide receiver. Like, he is willing to block. He's willing to do the dirty work, which is not something you see often from a guy who's that slender, but hey, he's really darn good at it. So you got contributions from everybody, like you mentioned. We've got a texter from the 316 who shouted out Sky Moore, who showed some pretty good hands in the game. I thought that third down conversion, I think it was a corner he was running. Tight throw by Mahomes, not a huge window of opportunity.
That sail route across the middle, that was on Derwin James.
That was on James.
I think that was on Derwin James, yeah.
Just plucked it out, late hands, great catch by Moore. He was fired up after that. You got Jody Fortson was on the receiving end of that unbelievable tiny window throw Mahomes had. Was that the first quarter even? I think it was on that far sideline deep ball. You got everybody involved. We've got a texter from the 785 who says this season, and especially last night, has proven that as great as Tyreek is, Kelce is infinitely more valuable. And I think you can also build on that and say having a multitude of guys who can impact the passing game or just the offense in general is more impactful than having just Tyreek Hill or even just Hill and Kelce. Because Kelce is still, he's the son, like you said. That's a great way to put it. I mean, look at the rest of last year's wide receiver group. Like, that group stunk. It was bad. Demarcus Robinson, we know what he is. Byron Pringle, we know what he is. McCole Hardman being used inappropriately.
Yeah, wide receiver 2.
Yeah, not good. Not good at all. But now, talking about it at full strength, because Smith-Schuster has had a good year. Hopefully he's back soon. He's had a very good year. Hardman, in a more offensive weapon role than wide receiver role, has found a great niche. Kadarius Toney is clearly going to be a part of this offense and special teams game going forward. MVS doing his thing. He's got a role and he's pretty good at filling it. Deep threat, clear out guy, downfield blocker. Awesome. That's working well. Justin Watson's a player, man. I don't think he's great by any means, but he's playing well enough. He's going to get a contract next year. I think he's a free agent.
I think so, yeah.
I think it was just a one-year deal.
Yeah.
He'll get a nice chunk of change next year, the way he's playing it. Hell, it might be from the Chiefs if they just say, hey, you know what? Screw it. Come back.
Right.
Like, you two clearly have something going on. He's a good red zone weapon. Let's stick with it. You've got so many guys, and the tight ends too. Fortson, we've liked Fortson here on this radio station for a while. I don't know what got into Noah Gray, but that's 3 weeks in a row he's made at least one nice play a game. Now, it's limited because Fortson has become a bigger weapon outside the red zone than I expected. Kelce is still the best tight end in football, but you brought Gray in to be a backup number 2 pass-catching tight end, and he has shown at least a little bit of juice 3 weeks in a row now, 3 games in a row. So getting so many guys involved is so much more valuable than just saying, okay, here's 2 great pieces, make it work.
And what's the constant in all this? 15. The constant is the best quarterback in football. The constant is the guy who's making throws, dropping balls in the bucket against tight one-on-one coverage to Jody Fortson.
Mm-hmm.
Like, who else is making that throw to tight end number 3? Really, tight end number 4 if Blake Bell were healthy, right? He's the 4th tight end on the depth chart, Jody Fortson.
Yep.
Who's making that throw downfield on a go route to Jody Fortson? Who else is doing that in the league? It's one guy. One. He's one of one. He's the best there is. Period. And he showed it again last night. You line up the odds against him. You take away some of his top weapons. You throw him against a defense that I thought they played hell-bent for leather for 60 minutes. Their pass rush was effective. They flew up the field. Didn't matter. He's just that great. Saying he's good undersells him. He's great. He's the best in football, and you come to expect it week in and week out. Louis Riddick of ESPN put it really well, I thought, on Twitter last night. He said, bro, you can't F with Mahomes, so quit trying. Bad games are an anomaly for him. Greatness is becoming the norm. Don't get bored with it. Just enjoy it. I liked this analogy even better from Robert Mays of The Athletic. You score a go-ahead touchdown with 2 minutes left against the Chiefs. It just feels like the moment in any Halloween movie when you learn that Michael Myers isn't actually dead.
For real, though, was anyone surprised by the way that game ended? Anyone? Because I wasn't, and I don't think you should be at that point. What were the Chargers going to do in that final minute and a half-ish that was going to say, oh, yeah, they're going to end up holding on to this lead? I think it was Steven Ruiz from The Ringer who tweeted, this game is either going to end with another classic Mahomes drive or the most outrageous turnover you can think of. There will be no middle ground, which is pretty much how the Bills game ended, right?
Yeah.
Like, totally out of character interception. Whoa, where'd that come from? More often than not, though, you get a result like this. And Mahomes has been this good. That's why I put it on Twitter again last night, man. Like, people who hate on him, they're like, yeah, it's not that special. Like, what are you doing? Who are you saying this for the benefit of? Like, what?
Is it fun? Like, do you enjoy watching football? Like
Yeah.
that's where it gets me. Like, are you enjoying yourself in the course of watching these football games? Because it doesn't sound like you're enjoying yourself if your gut instinct is to say, oh yeah, they ain't that good.
Because I've seen that from not, I follow a lot of Packers fans, obviously, and I see it occasionally from that group. But, if you're a Bills fan or whatever, you can like another quarterback better. You can say, I am so happy that my team has Josh Allen, and I wouldn't give him up for anything. He is my favorite player in the world. But dang, number 15 for the Chiefs is pretty awesome. Like, you can say that's okay. Like, it is okay to have that opinion. The hater stuff is very odd to me. But in the end, it doesn't really matter because, again, the Chiefs have Mahomes, and they're going to keep winning whether you like it or not. And I think they proved that again against a guy in Justin Herbert who escapes pretty much all criticism, despite, as Matt Verderame and Mitch Holthus like to point out, having a losing record for his career.
20-22 all time as a starter.
He's a good player.
Yeah, he is.
But
a lot of teams would be happy to have him, but
Chiefs wouldn't be.
You are what your record says you are.
That's true. Before we get to our first commercial break of the show, Dan, you've got a word for us from FanDuel.
Yeah, I certainly do. And, we've got the holiday coming up. Your Thanksgiving is coming up. And that makes now the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. You can make it a Thanksgiving to remember because when you bet an NFL same-game parlay now through November 28th, all customers can get up to $100 in free bets, win or lose. Just bet an SGP or SGP plus of at least $20. The bigger your bet, the more you'll get back in free bets. Same-game parlays are the perfect way to combine your bets for a chance at a larger payday. You can build your own or choose from one of the popular SGPs pre-built for you in FanDuel's top-rated sportsbook app. However you want to play, get up to $100 in free bets, win or lose. When you bet an NFL same-game parlay of 4 legs or more, just make sure you enter my promo code Lucero at sign-up, won't you? That's Lucero. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. You must be 21 and present in Kansas. Bonus issued is non-withdrawable free bets. It expires 7 days after receipt. Max free bet $100. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. FanDuel is offering online sports wagering under an agreement with Kansas Star Casino, LLC. Gambling problem? Getting help is your best bet. Call 1-800-522-4700 or visit ksgamblinghelp.com.
Got to be honest with you, I had a pretty good weekend with the old FanDuel picks. I went 7-1 on college football Saturday, 3-2 yesterday. So
not too shabby.
Not, can't go broke taking a profit. We'll talk more NFL weekend coming up later this hour with Matt Verderame. We'll recap the entire college football weekend. And boys, there are a lot to get to on the college front coming up in the 4 o'clock hour. But first, we'll recap the entire sports weekend next with the good, the bad, and the ugly here on 580 Sports Talk. It's time to recap the weekend with the good, the bad, and the ugly here on 580 Sports Talk with Brendan and Dan. Dan, I'll let you go first. What's your good from the weekend?
My good was Marcus Jones's game-winning punt return for the New England Patriots in the dying seconds of what ended up being their 10-3 win over the New York Jets. Not good because I have any particular fondness for the Patriots or anything, but I did have the Patriots laying 3.5 points, and the only way a touchdown was getting scored in that game is either a pick six or a special teams TD. And for the special teams TD to come in the dying seconds to cover the 3.5, that's a gambling story I'll remember for a long time.
Yeah, hard to be upset about that one. That's an all-time NFL bad beat. All time. My good, also football, also North American, but not in the United States of America. Folks, the Boatmen, the Argonauts of Toronto, knocked off the dastardly Winnipeg Blue Bombers last night to win the Grey Cup 24-23. Tremendous game. Yes, I did have an extra eye on it despite watching football throughout the afternoon and evening. Really fun game, close, competitive game. Blocked field goal with under a minute left sealed the win for the Argos. I would say the Argos are probably my second favorite team of the 9 in Canada, behind my beloved Saskatchewan Roughriders, obviously. Winnipeg, trash, throw them in the garbage, get them out of my face.
All right.
Zach Caleros, always been overrated, except when he played for my team, then he was good.
Shout out to Grey Cup champion Chad Kelly.
Yeah, Swag Kelly resurfacing in Toronto, which is hilarious, by the way.
Denver Bronco, great.
Quarterbacks in the CFL are so funny because there's like one in era that really spends a lot of time with their team. Like for a long time in Toronto, it was Ricky Ray, who was briefly with the Jets as well in the NFL. Anthony Calvillo, who
that's the same Ricky Ray coaching at Old Dominion now.
Yes. No, it is not.
Oh, it's not? That's a different Ricky Ray?
That is a different Ricky Ray.
My bad.
No, Ricky Ray looked like that's Ricky Rain.
Yeah, that'll do it.
Ricky Ray, when he was 33, looked about 56 when he played for the Argos. Anthony Calvillo, though, that's a name some people might have heard of. He's the all-time passing leader in Canada. He played for Montreal for like 20 years. Most dudes move rosters like every 6 months. It's very strange, very un-NFL-like. But yeah, shout out to the Argos for knocking off the evil Winnipeg Blue Bombers.
My bad, and we'll get to this more when we recap the college football weekend, but it sucks that Hendon Hooker tore his ACL and is out for the rest of the season. The Tennessee quarterback getting injured in their surprising blowout loss at South Carolina. The literal injury added to insult, just a huge bummer. Hendon Hooker was having an awesome year, has helped to revitalize that Tennessee program. Wish him all the best and hope to see him on Sundays.
Yeah, that really, really sucks. My bad. Kentucky basketball. I don't think they are very good. They have had 2 difficult games this year and have been embarrassed for one reason or another in both of them. They could not execute down the stretch against Michigan State 3 different times. Regulation, first overtime, second overtime. They end up losing by 9. And they lost by 16 points to Gonzaga. You could have told me it was 116, and I would have said, yeah, that sounds right. They got played off the floor up in Spokane yesterday.
I'm not sure John Calipari's the right man for this job, Paul.
There's an argument to be made for that. There certainly is. You can get as much. And you know what the funny thing is? This isn't even a freshman-heavy team anymore. Like, they've got plenty of young
veterans
guys. It's a veteran team, and they look lost. They look completely lost, which is not how that's supposed to work. You have an ugly?
Yes. For my ugly, what is it, if I may quote Office Space, Nathaniel Hackett, what is it you say you do here? Because we had to hire a game management coach for you after 2 weeks. Today, or yesterday, it was announced that you had given up play calling duties, handing it off to another nepotism baby in Clint Kubiak. And
former KU assistant.
And it didn't make a difference because, once again, 16 points was the magic number for the Broncos. They stopped on 16 like a bad blackjack player, and they ended up losing in overtime to the Las Vegas Raiders 22-16 when they forgot to cover Devontae Adams in overtime. Probably bad strategy. The Denver newspapers, the Denver Post, have now crowned Nathaniel Hackett the worst coach in Broncos history, considering that the previous holder of that crown, Josh McDaniels, is now 2-0 against the Broncos this season. They might be on to something. It can't last much longer for Hackett in Denver.
No, it absolutely cannot. Certainly not past this season, if not earlier than that. My ugly, real quick. Hey, Zach Wilson, here's a little tip for you. Humility, usually a good thing when you're a star quarterback. Saying I did not let our defense down when they gave up 3 points defensively and you did nothing and had more punts than completions, probably not the right look. We'll talk all about the NFL weekend that was with Matt Verderame coming up after this.
football, man.
Matt Verderame covers the entire NFL for fansided.com. You can find him on Twitter at Matt Verderame. And of course, check out all of his great work, including the weekly Stacking the Box column over at Fansided. Matt, last night, what was your biggest takeaway from yet another Chiefs comeback win over the Los Angeles Chargers?
I think Patrick Mahomes is pretty good. I think he might make it.
Hot take.
I think that's what I've got. You know what? Look, I thought the Chiefs started slow. A lot of it their own doing. They had a drop pass early. It was Kelce in the red zone. He tripped a little bit, and I think it threw off his timing. They had a couple of penalties on Bolton that really hurt him, especially the one where they roughed Herbert going out of bounds. They had a couple different times in the first half where really it's like they could have got going a little bit, and they got away from the run game. They were not in sync. And then in the second half of the game, is kind of becoming a theme now. Defensively, they were much better. They made adjustments. Really, other than the deep ball they gave up to Allen, that was it. They were great defensively. And then offensively, when they had to have it, Mahomes drove them right down the field. And I think really that is genuinely the biggest takeaway. Like, I don't know anybody who I've spoken to today who was at all surprised that the Chiefs won that game when they got the ball back. I think it would have been more shocking if they didn't win it. So when you have Mahomes, you have a chance, and the Chiefs had a chance, and they cashed in.
We've been saying on this show for most of the season now, and I think fairly, that it's pretty much a 3-team group for the top tier in the NFL. It's the Chiefs, it's the Bills, it's the Eagles. And I still think the Eagles are very good. I still think the Bills, even with Allen looking, I think, clearly bothered by his injury, I think they're still very good. But I'm at a point, Matt, where I think the Chiefs are even a half a step above those teams. They are playing at a level right now I don't think anyone in the NFL is even close to matching. These are the dog days of the season, and they're playing their best football. Would you agree with that? Do you think that they are clearly number one at this point, even above those other two very good teams?
Yes. And then I'm with you. Most of the year, I'd have had those three teams in the group, maybe even Philly on top, Buffalo on top, different points. Look, that stuff can happen. It can be cyclical. I mean, the Chiefs might not be on top in 2-3 weeks. You don't know how things are going to shake. Right now, I think when the Chiefs play their best, nobody's beating them. They are starting to find the 4-man pass rush. The last 2 weeks, they played Jacksonville and the Chargers, who have been top 3 in the league in sacks allowed, in a good way. Least sacks allowed. The Chiefs have 10 sacks in those 2 games. And it's not been because they're blitzing a ton. I mean, certainly a few of them have been. They blitzed Gay last night. He got a sack. But a lot of it has just been Chris Jones has been dominant. Dunlap's playing well. Tell you what, Frank Clark last night didn't have a sack. Frank Clark was really good last night. I mean, he was all over the field. Karlaftis played well last night. Saunders is playing well. Dana had 2 sacks. That is, to me, the big difference on defense. And offensively, it's a weird thing to say since Mahomes had the 2018 year. This is the best he's ever played. Right now is the best football he has ever played in his career. They are offensively, anytime they need to pick up yards, they can do it. They can run the ball now with Pacheco. They can throw the ball. I mean, when they have that kind of balance, they're devastating. And I don't think Buffalo and Philadelphia can match that. That's the one thing with the Chiefs I don't think the Bills or the Eagles have, is that balance of any which way you want to play them. They can play you and they can torch you.
As for the team that came out on the losing side last night, what do you do now if you're the Chargers? I mean, you still sure have a shot at making the playoffs this year, but you spent so much money to try to build this team into the group that could take down the Chiefs or at least hang with them. Well, you're effectively, due to the standings and losing the tiebreaker, you're effectively 4 games out now with 7 games left in the season. I mean, the race is over for the AFC West, and we're not even to Thanksgiving. We made it to Thanksgiving week. I mean, where does this franchise go? I mean, is Staley the guy? I don't think their offensive coordinator is the guy at all in Joe Lombardi. Obviously, Herbert's got talent, but it just sort of feels like they've kind of hit a ceiling at this point.
I think they have. And I don't think Staley is the guy. I've been pretty vocal about that. I think at some point here, they're going to come to the realization that you're just not going to win with the way they play. They're too conservative offensively. Last night, for once, they actually took some shots down the field and hit on them. But even with that, I mean, Herbert threw 2 balls last night, huge deep balls down the field. He still didn't throw 300 yards. I mean, they just can't generate a run game. They're constantly in these longer down and distances. I mentioned how much they've had success in terms of not giving up sacks. It's because he throws the ball quick. Last night, they decided to throw the ball longer down the field. He got sacked 5 times. They defensively are a mess. That is Staley's supposed side of the ball that he's great on. I mean, the Chiefs were missing half their offense last night and scored 30 points. And they would have scored more if they didn't beat themselves with some of the mistakes they made. They had no problem with the ball. So you do just look at it and start saying, look, I don't think he's the answer. Can they make the playoffs? Yeah, they're 5-5. It's a crowded group. I think, look, between them, the Pats, the Jets, and the Bengals, I think 2 of those teams are making the playoffs. So they're behind all those teams because they're all 6-4, but I think the Chargers are better than the Pats and the Jets. And the Chargers' schedule is not that daunting. Now, Chargers, who knows if they'll win the games they should win. And they're always dangerous with Herbert and his ability. But at some point, you got to win these games. You got to win. And they don't win. They threaten you, but they don't win.
We're talking with Matt Verderame of Fansided.com. He's our NFL insider, joining us every week at this time here on 580 Sports Talk. You can follow Matt and his work on Twitter at Matt Verderame and at Fansided.com. The Stacking the Box column out every Monday morning. The Stacking the Box podcast every week as well. Matt, the marquee NFC matchup of the week, the Vikings and the Cowboys, was no contest. CBS switched us to a more competitive game midway through the third quarter as Dallas stomped Minnesota 40-3. Was that more reflective of the Cowboys being really good or the Vikings being kind of fraudulent?
I think it's both. I think it's both things. Look, when the Cowboys play as well as they can play, they're a Super Bowl contender. Not that I think they can win the Super Bowl. They can get to it. I don't think they'll beat anybody coming out of the AFC, but they could get there. Their problems are not consistent. You know, they have games where they look like that, then they'll have other games where they come out and they look like they don't know what football is for 2.5 quarters. The Vikings have sustained themselves all year in these one-score games, a lot of them against bad teams. I know Vikings fans would say, look at the Bills game, and I'd say, okay, yes, that's great. That was a miracle. I mean, that really was. You needed a million things to break your way that are highly improbable, and it happened. I think the Vikings are a good team. They're going to win their division. They could very well win a playoff game. I don't think they're going to the I don't think Minnesota's any real threat to get to the Super Bowl. With Dallas, I wouldn't pick the Cowboys based on their inconsistency, but their talent is such that they could make a run towards it.
The Jets and the Patriots played a football game yesterday that set offensive football back at least a decade, maybe several decades. Is it over for Zach Wilson in New York? Is it time for the Jets to maybe even make a quarterback switch now to try and save what is potentially a playoff season?
So I wrote about this in Stacking the Box. I even did a video on it for the Stacking the Box YouTube channel. Look, I watched the end of that game. That was one of the most disgraceful final 2 minutes of a football game you'll ever see in your life. Like, you know what, Robert Saleh, coach of the Jets, you're 3-3 in a game that if you win that game, you got a really good chance of making the playoffs. And I get Zach Wilson stinks. I get it. He does. He stinks in all caps. But you know what? He's your quarterback. You've got to go try and win the game in the final 2 minutes. And they're sitting there basically kneeling on the ball with 2 minutes left, just running the ball into the line of scrimmage to play for overtime. I mean, what did Robert Saleh think? Like, if they got to overtime, they won the toss, what was he going to do? Run it down the field the whole way? Like Belichick wasn't aware of that? You're going to have to, at some point, put the ball in his hands. If you have that little faith in him, then bench him. Then sit him down on the bench, put Mike White in the game, and play it out. And I got to say, if I was a Jets defender, I would have been pissed. You played all day, gave up 3 points, so you could watch your coach basically cower in the fetal position with 2 minutes left. And then you punt the ball away, and your punter drills it on a line drive at the guy, and he runs 84 yards for a touchdown. I don't know whether the coach didn't tell him to kick it out of bounds or he just mishit it or what. I don't know what the Jets were doing. I don't understand any part of that. And as far as I'm concerned going forward, if the Jets want to make the playoffs, he needs to sit down. Not just because of this game. He has been awful all year long. They've been winning in spite of him. They won the game Denver in spite of him. They won the game against Buffalo because they ran for 200 yards, played good defensively. They're not winning because of Zach Wilson. And I don't know if Mike White or Joe Flacco's any better, but if I'm them, I'm trying. I'm doing something. Because if you're in a must-win game, in my opinion, and you're essentially trying to run the clock out in a tie game, yeah, it's time. It's over. I mean, he can sit up there all he wants and say he believes in Zach Wilson. No, he doesn't. Because if he did, he would have thrown the ball. They were gutless. They deserved to lose. And now they're 6-4, and they got real problems because their schedule gets much tougher.
Matt, I confess I enjoy hearing you talk about bad football, but I'd prefer to ask you about good football. Here's the problem with that. It didn't seem like there was a lot of that on display on this particular Sunday. Was there anything or anybody else that stood out to you as a particularly impressive performance or an important week, a positive week for them? Or was it just kind of another weekend where it feels like everybody's kind of middling in the NFL right now, except for 3 or 4 teams?
Yeah, I mean, really, right now it does feel that way. Kansas City, Buffalo, Philly. I think Miami's actually pretty good. Obviously, they're on a bye this week. Tennessee, give them credit. Tennessee looked great on Thursday night. I would obviously say Dallas played really, really well. Cincinnati, I know Burrow had a couple of fluky picks. The Bengals played well. They didn't play great defensively. You give up 30 points to the Steelers. It almost takes effort to do that. But I really think what's going to happen is we're going to get to the end of the season, and you're going to get to the playoffs. And the NFC playoffs are going to be very, very top-heavy. You're going to have Philly. I think you're going to have San Francisco, some degree Dallas. And then the rest of those teams are a waste of time. Maybe Tampa makes it somewhat interesting. The AFC, I think that's where this season's going to pay off because you have a lot of teams that not maybe great teams like the Dolphins, the Bengals, the Ravens, but you have quarterbacks who are going to make those games really interesting. And you're going to have guys making big plays. The problem in the regular season is a lot of times these games get mucked up because you have these other quarterbacks who just cannot execute. They can't play in or out of structure. You watch a lot of these games. I mean, the Colts should have beaten the Eagles 10 times out of 10 yesterday, but they can't execute their way out of a paper bag on offense. Like, they just can't do anything. I watched that Broncos-Raiders games. I might file a class action lawsuit against the NFL for them to put that game on television. I mean, neither one of those teams could execute at all, other than Josh Jacobs running the ball and then Russell Wilson throwing the ball for 3 feet a clip. I just think there's a lot of quarterback head coach combinations this year that are just bad. And when you get to the playoffs, you'll eliminate a lot of them, obviously. But until then, I think it's going to be a lot of weeks where you're looking at it and going, all right, 16 games, 4 of them are interesting. And it's been a bad year of football so far for the NFL.
Speaking of a game you just mentioned there, Matt, last question we've got for you. Does Nathaniel Hackett make it through the year?
I think he makes it through the year. I think he's fired on his way off the field in week 18. But I don't know. If you're the Broncos, like, what is the upside of firing him right now? What is the upside? I don't know. I mean, maybe you want to say, well, the fan base will be happy, but okay. I mean, the fan base is apathetic to them already. They stink. They're going to win 4 or 5 games. I think they just ride out the year. There's nobody on that staff who you're like, that guy's the obvious interim head coach. And I love their D coordinator, but it's not like he's a guy who is a veteran coach. You're going to, put him in there. I think it's Denver. You wait. You can't hack at the end of the season. And then you launch a search. I got to tell you, that is not an attractive job. You are signed up with Russell Wilson for the next 6 years. And I'll tell you right, there's not a coach alive, I don't care who he is, that's going to go in there and survive 6 years of Russell Wilson if he plays the way he's playing. So if you're a coach with options, why would you go there? Why would you sign up for that? It's going to be interesting to see how that shakes.
Matt Verderame covers the entire NFL over at fansided.com. You can go check out the Stacking the Box column right now. It's a great read, even though it really tears into my Packers at the beginning, but that's okay. Fair is fair. You can also follow Matt on Twitter as well, at Matt Verderame. As always, Matt, we appreciate the time. Happy Thanksgiving to you and your family, and we'll talk to you after the holiday on Monday.
Happy Thanksgiving, guys. Take care.
That is Matt Verderame from fansided.com. It's truly, we don't just say it because we talk to Matt every week. The Stacking Box column really is full of great info around the NFL.
Yeah, it goes around the league really well. It's really well written, obvious passion for the game. And it is unfortunate we don't have more good football to talk about. But I do love hearing Matt talk bad football.
He really does have a way with words when it comes to things that suck.
Yeah.
It really does. It's a gift. And I mean that in an honest, like, very complimentary way. It is a gift. That'll do it for this 3 o'clock hour of 580 Sports Talk. We're off a little bit early today. We're done at 5:30 because of K-State Hoops taking on Rhode Island down in the Cayman Islands. So we will be off just half an hour early, but we do have a full 4 o'clock hour coming your way. A lot of college football to get to. K-State wins big, KU loses big, and so much more from the weekend. Plus, we've got What Is Wrong With You. All that and more is coming up next hour here on 580 Sports Talk. Hey now, 4 o'clock hour of 580 Sports Talk coming your way. Brendan Dworzinski and Dan Lucero here with you. Thank you so much for spending some of your afternoon hours with us on this Monday. Excuse me, I already had to Tuesday. We've got a short week this week, so it's... Well, no, that'd make it more like Wednesday than Tuesday. We have shows today, tomorrow, and Wednesday. We're off Thursday because it's Thanksgiving. We're off Friday as well because, well, no one wants to come back for one day of work between Thanksgiving and the weekend. So we get the day off. So we will be enjoying that time with family, friends, or maybe just by ourselves. Hope you do the same for the long holiday weekend, but you do have plenty of us coming up between today, tomorrow, and Wednesday. We should also note, not only is today a short show because of Kansas State basketball against Rhode Island, but tomorrow and Wednesday, we may also have short shows as well.
Or no shows.
Yes, there is a chance if K-State loses tonight, they will play at 4 o'clock tomorrow with pregame at 3. That will eat up the entirety of 580 Sports Talk. So if K-State loses tonight, we will not have a show tomorrow. We'll be back in full on Wednesday. Full show for you. If K-State wins tonight, then we'll be on from 3 to 5:30 again tomorrow. And then depending on tomorrow's game, we either will have a shortened show or we will have we'll have a shortened show or no show on Wednesday. So all depends on how well K-State plays. If you would like to hear more of us, then keep rooting for K-State to win because that means they will continue to play later in the day. If you're like, wow, I actually want an extra long weekend from the two of them, well, then root for a win today and a loss tomorrow.
You would rather spend your afternoons with Wyatt Thompson than with, or actually, would that be Wyatt? Did he make the trip to the Caymans? Do we know?
I don't know if Wyatt Thompson made the trip, but I bet you we can find out pretty quickly via @CatVoiceWyatt on Twitter, which is Wyatt Thompson's Twitter handle. I would figure he would lend us a clue as to whether or not he made the trip. No, actually, that is not true. Wyatt's last tweet was on March 27th. So never mind.
An early adopter to those abandoning the Twitter ship.
Yeah, he dipped out. In fact, Wyatt's last 3 tweets are from March 27th of this year, January 11th of 2016, and December 4th of 2015.
That rules.
On which date Wyatt tweeted, "So excited for the Cats. Great start on the road. Dean Wade. Wow."
For what it's worth, the game notes produced by Tom Gilbert, the outstanding director of men's basketball communications at Kansas State. The game notes do have Wyatt Thompson listed as the radio play-by-play voice.
All right.
So, yeah, a few days in the Caymans, and then he can get back to Manhattan for the Sunflower Showdown on Saturday. That ain't no thing.
Manhattan, an infamously easy place to fly to. Lots of flights from lots of different places. Hey, it's nice you guys have an airport. No disrespect here.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, we're going to have short, abbreviated, or just non-existing shows over the next 2 days, along with our short show today. So stay tuned. Stay paying attention to the K-State basketball results, and you'll find out how much of us you'll be hearing over the next couple of days. Coming up this hour, what you'll be hearing from us is a lot of college football talk. Big win for K-State, big loss for KU. We'll get to both those here in just a moment. Later on in the hour, we will also get to general chatter from the college football weekend. A lot happened this weekend in college football. Kind of a moving weekend of sorts, at least for a few teams that were in contention. USC stonks up. Tennessee stonks down. The rest of the top 4, they all got a scare. Every single team in the top 4 got a scare to some degree. All of them still won. TCU had the end of the game of the year. We will talk all about all those games coming up later on in the hour. Plus, we've got our first What Is Wrong With You of this short week. And we would love to hear from you as well on the Big O Tires text line, 785-272-9429. And you can also comment on YouTube as well. Sports on 580 WIBW is the channel. We've got the live stream up and running today. Say hello to everybody on camera.
Hi, guys.
Band t-shirt for me today. I went with my... Jake didn't make a comment about it today, but I'm wearing my dad's t-shirt today.
I still remember the day Jake discovered there was a band called Dads and has turned it into a running joke going on 4 or 5 years.
It's pretty much changed his life. Like anytime music comes up,
he's like,
"Are you listening to Dads?" No, I do listen to other
Dads.
bands.
Is that a dad song?
I do actually listen to other groups as well. So you can chime in on the YouTube comments section. Let us know what you're thinking throughout the show today. Let's start with the good from the weekend for our local college football teams. Let's start with K-State. That was one of the weirdest first quarters you're ever going to see. 47 points in a quarter is a lot.
Yeah, it was bonkers. The total was in immediate danger, and of course did eventually go over the total. It was a wild start to the game. Lots of splashy plays, and a rare mistake by Will Howard led to West Virginia points.
Mm-hmm.
A rare mistake by the K-State secondary turned into a long touchdown for West Virginia. When honestly, it felt 3 minutes in, Kansas State jumps out to the 14-0 lead, feels like they could name their final score. And then West Virginia punches right back. They miss an extra point, starting a day full of special teams and point after misadventures. Yeah, it was just bizarre. And I think for the defense, it is right and fair, I think, to point out that they missed Kobe Savage at safety. One of the things that Tim Fitzgerald pointed out when we had him on last week about Savage is he is so critical in communicating things to the rest of the secondary and the rest of the defense. And it felt like some of the busts in coverage might have been ameliorated if there was better communication on the back end that might have existed if Kobe Savage were in the game. But in a similar vein to the Texas game, it looked like in the first half they were on skates, and then at halftime they made some adjustments, and they came out a completely different defense in the second half. What Joe Klanderman has done really, really well, I think, all season long as a K-State defensive coordinator is make those halftime adjustments. K-State's defense is better in the second halves of games. They're more consistent. They tackle better. There are fewer of those coverage busts. I just think they get better as the game goes along, and that is that's a tribute to coaching. That's a tribute to on-field leadership. That's a tribute to a lot of things. But I think that certainly happened and helped kind of stabilize the game a little bit because West Virginia went on that forever drive to start the third quarter and ended up not getting any points out of it because K-State got the stop.
How often does that seem to happen when teams go on drives that just seem to last forever and then it ends in no points? It feels like that happens a lot.
Yeah.
Maybe that's an anecdotal thought.
More than it should. Like, you feel like you're eating up that kind of clock. Like, then you're running the ball effectively. So third and short, fourth and short shouldn't be a problem for you. Just keep running the ball. And yet, it gets to be more of a problem. As the field compresses, fewer options, and it gets a little easier to defend. So maybe that's why. I don't know if there's a magic bullet or one particular reason or another for that being the case. But the K-State offense continues to click with Will Howard. Made the one mistake, tried to force the ball in, and Cade Warner, I don't think, knew it was coming. Otherwise, he might have been able to jockey for position a little better for that ball. Instead, ends up picked off and going the other way for the pick six. And I wondered in the moment, okay, this is Will Howard's first big mistake. Or at least this is the first, bad read that has cost him. It didn't just end up an interception. It ended up a pick six. And now all of a sudden, instead of you're cruising out of the gate, and now you're in a dogfight again. How is that going to affect Will Howard's confidence? Not even one tiny iota did it affect his confidence. He was back out slinging it the very next drive. It didn't affect him in the least. And that, again, credit to coaching, credit to player development, credit to Will Howard, the man and the player that he is becoming as a Wildcat.
Yep.
That was huge and showed me that this offense is the real thing. It's not just a small sample size fluke. It is Will Howard has the skill and Will Howard has the will, no pun intended, to make this happen in the ways that it's happening for the Kansas State offense. And their playmakers are making plays. I was a little surprised they didn't get Deuce Vaughn more involved in the passing game the way they did effectively against Baylor.
Yeah.
But I guess they didn't really need him because Malik Knowles had a nice day. Phillip Brooks had a couple of catches. Ben Sinnott continues his breakout second half of the season. And all in all, it was the performance you were hoping you would get. It was controlled. It was poised. K-State didn't lose their cool when West Virginia was playing well in the first half. They got in the locker room with the lead. They made their adjustments. They salted the game away in the second half. And it was a big hurdle in front of them and the Big 12 championship game. Having to go on the road, play against a team desperate for bowl eligibility, where they've been a better team all year in front of their home fans. And K-State cleared that bar with ease. And now all that's left is to dominate a in-state rival that you've been dominating for the better part of a decade and a half on your home field. And then it's clear sailing from there to Arlington and another crack at the Horned Frogs.
For the defense in this game, I'm not worried because sometimes games just get chaotic. Like games like this just happen sometimes where things get weird, and you could be playing really good defense in general for the season. Maybe you start the game with good defense and things just get out of hand. And that's what this game felt like. And if that happens once a season, I'm not going to complain all that much. So I'm not really worried about the defensive effort at that point. I know that we're kind of past this argument by now, but I think this week was also another example of how much more explosive on a play-to-play basis K-State is with Will Howard at quarterback than with Adrian Martinez. And this is just another data point in that argument. And again, I know we're pretty much past that. And I know Adrian Martinez is not technically out for the season. Maybe come, well, if Howard gets hurt, obviously he would get a call, assuming he gets cleared to go. If he is cleared to go, he'll maybe get a few snaps in the bowl game to kind of send him out on a high note. But this team right now, given its options, is better, more explosive, and I think more dangerous with Will Howard in as your quarterback. And look, they can beat anybody who's in front of them. That includes KU this week. That includes TCU as well. This is the position you want to be in. You control your own destiny to this point. All you need is to, like you said, beat a KU team who you have beaten regularly, who you are heavily favored against. I
opened at 13 and a half.
Okay. I knew it was 13 or 14 and a half this morning. I couldn't remember which one it was. That's a fair line. Look at what KU's coming off of. Look at what K-State's coming off of. Look at series history.
Currently, though, down to 11 and a half. Opened at 13 and a half, but I guess a lot of early action on Kansas has moved it.
I get it. I do. That makes K-State a lot more enticing, though. I mean, I think 13 or 14 and a half would have given me a lot of pause, honestly, given the direction these two teams are heading in. And I don't mean to be super fatalist, nihilistic KU fan. I'm just being serious here. K-State's got everything to play for. KU has accomplished a lot, but is frankly playing for the difference between the Armed Forces Bowl and the Guaranteed Rate Bowl. Like there's not a whole lot here to play for. I mean, there is pride, obviously, and on the line.
A chance to reshape the rivalry.
That is true.
They've got a chance to alter what has been the course of this rivalry, again, for a decade plus now, which is Kansas State wins and Kansas State wins handily. Kansas State wins without breaking a sweat. That's been the narrative. That's been the norm in this rivalry. And Kansas is a good enough football team now to start to rewrite that. To, at the very least, turn the Sunflower Showdown into something competitive and compelling, if not win the darn thing outright. But they are, I'm sure, spending the last couple of days licking their wounds a bit, because as we kind of transition to talking about KU's home loss to Texas, that was the first game this year where it felt like the bad old days, where it felt like, oh, this is a Big 12 opponent that's just playing a different game than we are.
Yep.
And it's like we talked about last week. The difference was in the trenches. Texas bullied Kansas, and simple and plain, that is why you saw the result you saw, particularly for Texas's offense. It was just bully ball, and there was nothing Kansas could do. They were too light in the seat to do anything about it.
I really do think if Texas had decided not to pass all game, they would have put up more points. There was no need to pass. Like, Quinn Ewers went 12 of 21 for, I think it was 107 yards and a touchdown. Quinn Ewers was a nobody in this game. He was completely unnecessary. They could have had Hudson Card play that entire game, and they would have won by just as many. I saw someone say, oh, man, next year's draft class with, Quinn Ewers and Caleb Williams. Well, hold on. There must be a second Quinn Ewers that we're talking about here. He was a nobody. It's not surprising, but it is simultaneously disappointing you got a game like that. Now, the really unfortunate thing is, as bad as KU's offense was, it really didn't matter because the defense wasn't stopping Bijan Robinson.
No.
He went for 243 yards and 4 touchdowns on 25 carries, and he didn't even play 3 full quarters. Okay? Like, Texas, in its entire program history, the truly storied, legendary history of Texas football, had only once, up until this week, had a game with a 200-yard rusher and 100-yard rusher in the same game. You got to go back to the bone, okay? We're going back to the wishbone days for Texas. Once in program history, it happened on Saturday in Lawrence. And KU did not have a prayer in that game defensively, which you would have liked to have seen, but given what we know about this defense and what we know about Bijan Robinson, it probably wasn't going to happen. Now, I will say it did suck for the offense to not even make it a game. Jalen Daniels did have a couple big throws late. He was throwing mostly against backups. Then in the final drive, he was throwing mostly against freshmen. I mean, they were really running JVs out there at the end of the game.
Well, here's my question for you, as somebody, you were there and watched the closing stages of that game probably a little more closely than I did. Was it rust for Jalen Daniels, or was it something else? Because I fully expected that Daniels right out of the gate would have at least a little rust. That would be understandable coming off of the injury layoff that he's coming off of. But did it feel like there was rust to you? Was the main culprit for KU's offense stalling the way that it did? Or was it they just didn't have the answers against Texas's defense, regardless of what the quarterback situation was?
I think it was a three-pronged issue. I think two of them are specifically intertwined. I think they didn't really have an answer for what Texas was doing. It was not the most well-called game, I think, by Andy Kotelnicki on the season, which, I mean, he's had banger after banger. Eventually, you're going to run into a dud. That happens sometimes. You know, ride the lightning, had escape on it. It happens. You had rust from Jalen Daniels. Shout out to the Metallica fans out there. Jalen Daniels had rust. There was no denying that. It took all of like 4 plays for people to say Bean should be going. Well, Bean can't. He was obviously well enough to play because he did play for a handful of snaps in the game, but I have no problem with Jalen Daniels playing when he's ready to go. No problem at all with that.
He's undisputed QB1. Yeah,
undisputed. He was your better option to win, and he was still rusty. He also was not even close to 100%. He can be good enough to play and be cleared. And Lance Leipold told us this 1 week ago today. And he said, hey, look, if he can go, he's going to go, but he's not going to be 100%. And he was not. And you could tell. I had this conversation with Scott Chasen, who, by the way, is now at the Kansas City Star. Shout out to him, assistant sports editor now at the Star, friend of the program. But we were just chatting in the press box, and he said, I mean, look at his footwork. Just look at these throws, even the really good throws he made. And he did have a couple where you thought, yeah, there's the Jalen Daniels that we know. He was laboring, man. I mean, it took everything he had to get the ball down the field on some of those throws. And I felt bad because he was putting it all out there. He was taking hits. That targeting call was, I mean, what are you doing, Texas?
That was glad he got up.
Lance Leipold called that one of the dirtiest plays he has ever seen in his coaching career. I don't know if I would have gone as far as to say dirty. It was stupid. It was absolutely targeting. It was absolutely unnecessary. I mean, he lost his mind. He got flagged for how much he was yelling on that play. How often do you see a coach actually get a flag for yelling at the refs? If it happened regularly, it would have happened to Matt Campbell every single game this season.
Right.
You do not see that very often. We must have said something especially personal to someone on the refereeing crew. He was giving it his all, and I respect the hell out of that. He just was not even nearly 100%. And that was unfortunate, but it is what it is.
So then the question becomes, as we get ready for Sunflower Showdown week, we're in Sunflower Showdown week, so we get ready for Saturday night. Is there enough juice for Daniels to look like the September, October version of himself in this game? Or because of the nature of the injury he suffered, is it still going to be a lesser version by necessity, a version where he's not going to be doing as much with his legs because you're worried about him getting hit, a version that the deep ball is not as significant a threat because the arm strength isn't all the way back? And it's disappointing because I would, like back in September, October, when we really started to look at the Sunflower Showdown as, oh my gosh, this could be like K-State could be fighting for or KU could be fighting for bowl eligibility. K-State could be looking at maybe going to a Big 12 championship. Like, we're talking about this stuff realistically in September and October. We're talking about Jalen Daniels as a Heisman Trophy candidate. Mm-hmm. It stinks that we're not going to get at least one of the main characters, so to speak, in this Sunflower Showdown matchup, the most tantalizing one in years.
Yeah.
not at the best version of himself due to injury. A diminished version of Jalen Daniels in this game is a bummer. And I don't care what side of the rivalry you come down on, because I think if you're Kansas State, you'd like to be able to say that you took on Kansas at their best. And they don't look, they didn't look like they were at their best with Jalen Daniels because of the injury. Not because I think Jalen Daniels is a diminished player. I think he is diminished by his injury.
They don't want him to run, and I don't know if that's because he's just not, the shoulder's not stable enough to run. I don't know if that's him being extra cautious, the coaching staff, what. You didn't see a single option play. You didn't see a lot of the misdirection stuff that was working so well for this offense early on. And that's not to say, okay, well, you have to put Bean back in, because, again, when you compare ceilings, KU's is, I think, undisputably higher with Jalen Daniels in that role. I really do. But if he isn't able to run for whatever reason, you just lose you lose a lot of dynamism in that offense, and that is unfortunate. And you're not going to get the full experience of Jalen Daniels in this game, which really does stink. I do want to get to this real quick because I know we've got a FanDuel read and we've got to get to a commercial break before What Is Wrong With You, because I mentioned this earlier. My warm take for this weekend, I have no juice for this game, at all. More than last year, when I swear to God on this program, Jake and I pretty much said, there's nothing to even talk about. KU's rebuilding. They're in year 0 of a program. K-State is much better. KU is very bad. We had no excitement at all going into the game in Lawrence.
I don't remember a thing about that game last year. Not one thing.
No, it went exactly how we would think about it. We talked about it for 15 minutes on Monday, and it was it. It meant nothing. I have a little more excitement for it this year because KU has been better, and KU's got better players, and there's still a lot of looking toward the future to think about. And K-State's very, very good, obviously. But, I don't know. I don't hate Kansas. I went to everybody knows. I went to KU. I graduated from KU. I love KU to death. But I'm not the kind of fan who, hates my rival more than I love my own team. I have friends who are like that. I have friends who hate the University of Missouri more than they love Kansas. I'm not like that. And I hate Mizzou. I don't hate Kansas State. I really don't. I applied to go to school at K-State. I toured K-State's campus the same weekend I toured KU when I was a senior in high school.
You're married to a K-Stater.
Yeah, my wife is a graduate of K-State. We watch every K-State game in our house. I don't hate Kansas State. They're good for business too. When their win is better for you and I. I just don't have that. I saw some folks on Twitter, and this isn't a criticism, but I saw this morning when I opened up Twitter. I saw somebody who tweeted, every week is Chicken Hawk hate week. I'm I don't have that in my heart. If that is you, more power to you. I physically cannot feel that. And if Daniels was healthy, and maybe if KU was looking for win 8 or 9 and K-State had something on the line, maybe I'd be more jazzed about this. But I think K-State's going to win this game by 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, KU already climbed their mountain. They're going bowling. They have climbed their mountain. This is about getting Jalen Daniels, back closer to ramming speed, so you can go and make a good accounting for yourself at the bowl game. That's what's at stake, other than of course the rivalry. Kansas State has so much more at stake beyond the rivalry. The ability to go to Dallas, play in the Big 12 championship game. The stakes are higher, and the stakes have been higher for Kansas State in this game for years now. And I have always said that the biggest advantage Kansas State has in this game, and KU's not to overcoming it. I think they're making strides in this area, but they're not there to overcome it yet. K-State's got more Kansas kids. And it matters to Kansas kids. This game matters to them. It does not matter as much to people who didn't grow up around it, because it is not a rivalry that registers on a national scale. If you're outside of the Sunflower State boundaries, or you didn't go to KU or K-State, this rivalry doesn't ring bells. It doesn't. But if you grew up loving football in Kansas and dreaming about playing Division I, you're damn right this game means something. And a lot more of those kids wear purple than wear red and blue. So I think that advantage is still on K-State's side and gives them a massive edge going into Saturday. But KU is good enough, even with Daniels diminished injury-wise, they are good enough to hang. And if they keep it interesting, then we'll have one of the best Sunflower Showdown games we've had in many years.
And I really hope it is. I really hope it is good. By the way, so to this point, because again, we got to get to a break real quick. 13 straight wins for K-State. One, it is remarkable. And I know K-State fans say, well, yeah, that was before World War II. It is amazing that KU is still up 16 games in this rivalry. It is absurd that is still the disparity. And I know I wasn't alive for most of those KU wins. I get it. it's still just crazy how big the disparity was. Do you know how many of those 13 straight wins have been within one score?
I would say 0.
2.
2. Okay.
The first one in 2009, 17-10. And in 2018, there was that awful game.
Oh, yeah.
Peyton Bender started for KU. There, turnover after turnover for both teams. KU had like 4 chances to take the lead and sucked on every one of those drives. That was the last year. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a horrible football game. A truly, truly bad game. But you're right. I mean, Echo Boydo is from Lawrence. Like, there's a Deneen on the K-State roster.
Yeah.
Like, hey, we're here and not there, and that means something to us. Cooper Beebe. Like, he's from Kansas City. I mean, that's right nearby. There are a lot of dudes who are nearby. Hell, you've got a Desmond Purnell who's, a Topeka kid.
Yeah.
Who is starting for K-State, at least in spot roles. That means something for those guys who are nearby to both and end up going to one.
And like we said, KU's making up ground in that department, but they still have half as many Kansas kids as K-State does.
Is it even that many?
No, it's not. I think it's 53 Kansas kids on the K-State roster, 24 on the KU roster.
And we've heard throughout the year from both players and from coaches and from the folks who cover recruiting, from Michael Swain, who covers KU, Kevin Flaherty, who writes for 24/7 Sports as well, who does more just general Kansas recruiting, that a lot of people are saying, hey, KU's trying a lot harder than Weiss or Beatty or Miles ever did. And that's something. They're still not making the kind of progress that K-State is, though. And that's something that'll take time. And that at some point, this is going to mean a lot to both sides for postseason implications, just for head-to-head bragging rights implications. I just personally am not quite there yet. Because I don't hate K-State. I really don't. And I don't think I ever will. Like, I don't have that in me.
2 real quick texts from the Big O Tires text line. One from the 785. Did K-State really need to risk Vaughn unnecessarily with the lead that they had? The answer to that is really a tip of the cap to DJ Giddens, how good he's been, that there's even a consideration of, hey, let's get Vaughn off the field.
Yeah, he was awesome.
Yeah, DJ Giddens did. He played really, really well, and credit to him. I think that's a bit of a respect to West Virginia that they left Vaughn in as long as they did. Also, a texter from the 412 asked why Tim Brando gets to call the Sunflower Showdown, and we wish we knew the answer to that. The question is posed, why does Tim Brando deserve to call Saturday's game? I'm going to quote one of my favorite TV shows of all time, The Wire, and one of my favorite characters on the show, Snoop. Deserve got nothing to do with it.
No. Real quick, do you want to get us word from FanDuel?
Yes, I do. It's time for a great big world soccer event that FanDuel cannot have me mention the name of directly when I do this read, but you can get more kicks out of every world soccer match with FanDuel. Now's the perfect time to give it a shot because new customers get $125 in free bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and super easy to use. You can bet on everything from the money line to goals scored to corners. You can even do same-game parlays, and you get your winnings paid instantly. So don't miss your chance to get $125 in free bets, win or lose, when you join FanDuel with my promo code Lucero. Make every moment more with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Must be 21 and present in Kansas. First online real money wager only. $10 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable free bets that expire 14 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. FanDuel is offering online sports wagering in Kansas under an agreement with Kansas Star Casino LLC. Gambling problem? Getting help is your best bet. Call 1-800-522-4700 or visit ksgamblinghelp.com.
We've got another texter who says, no, what is wrong with you today? Oh, no, we just had a KU K-State super segment. What is wrong with you is coming up next here on 580 Sports Talk.
hell? What the hell?
It is time for What Is Wrong With You here on 580 Sports Talk, the first in a shortened week of What Is Wrong With You and just the show in general because of the Thanksgiving holiday. But we do have two great stories going head-to-head. I love the headlines for both of them. Dan, would you like to go first?
Sure, I would be happy to go first. We are going to Gastonia, North Carolina, where a man allegedly pulled a gun on a Wendy's employee after he did not receive sauce with his order
Come on, man.
from the fast food restaurant.
Come on.
Listen, I've been to fast food restaurants and asked for sauce. My wife likes to dip her French fries in, sometimes maybe it's honey mustard, sometimes maybe it's ranch. When I go get like chicken nuggets or chicken tenders, like to have something to dip them in.
Mm-hmm.
There is only one fast food establishment that bats 1,000. And I won't say which one because I'm not going to give them free advertising, but I have never, ever been told my pleasure and then not gotten my sauce. Everywhere else can be very hit or miss. And apparently this Wendy's in Gastonia missed. Officers with the Gastonia Police Department responded to reports of an altercation between a customer and employees at the restaurant last week. The 35-year-old man, boy, that's old enough to know better, was driving around the parking lot, brandishing a gun and refusing to leave. Officers spoke with an employee at Wendy's who told them the man was upset he didn't get any sauce with his meal. The man began arguing with the employee, pulled out a handgun, and threatened to shoot the employee. The employee closed the drive-thru window and immediately called 911. Officers later discovered that the gun had been reported stolen. So the man has been charged with communicating a threat and possession of a stolen handgun.
Maybe don't have all that on you while,
Come up off that buffalo sauce, or I'm going to let the chopper sing. Not necessary.
That is unbelievable. Just ask again. Ask for more sauce. Go to a different Wendy's. Come on, man. My story is going to take us to Springfield, Missouri, where we meet a gentleman who wanted to prove a point to his lover.
What a mugshot, man.
Yeah. Our gentleman's name is Michael Lloyd.
Wait, I just noticed the throat tattoo.
His mugshot has his mouth half open, his eyes bugging out of his head, and he's got a tattoo of an anti-police slang term.
Yes, an anti-law enforcement sentiment that includes a certain four-letter profanity.
Yeah, that's tattooed on his face. Well, he pleaded guilty recently to robbing a Bank of America branch using a demand note that was written on the back of his own birth certificate. We've had personal stationery with demand notes and bank robberies.
Receipts with credit card information.
Yeah, receipts. The guy who had his discharge papers from getting out of jail, his parole statement.
Yeah.
This dude wrote it on the back of his own birth certificate. And he claims it was to prove a point to his lover, although police are unaware of what that point may actually have been. My web browser is crashing on me, so I'll have to pull up the story via my phone. However, that is the gist of this entire story, that the man robbed a bank with his own birth certificate. You don't really need a whole lot more in terms of detail for that, other than the fact that it's just aggressively dumb. Here is the official story in the release from the Western District of Missouri. This originally happened back in July at approximately 11:30 a.m. when an unknown then white male wearing a gray cutoff t-shirt with blue gym shorts entered the branch bank in Springfield, Missouri. He had multiple tattoos brandished on both his left and right arms. He approached the teller, presented a note, and written on the piece of printer-like paper was written in pink marker, "Give your money now. Don't say anything. I have a partner outside." The teller who received the note has been referred to as DD. DD then took the note, grabbed the money from one of the teller drawers, handed the money, and the demand note was then taken, delivered to the police, and they were pretty easily able to find the guy. Again, trying to prove a point to his lover, and we do not have an explanation as to why.
It's like that old drill tweet. We're going to the middle of the desert, establish a colony in the middle of the desert to either die or prove a very important point.
This man proved a point.
He did.
Not sure which point that was.
I think he proved a point to his lover that she should break up with him. They should break up with him immediately.
This is next level, man. I do not understand this at all.
It's the mugshot for me, man. That is one of the all-time mugshots. The throat tattoo.
Yeah, the tat on his throat really, really hammers it home that this guy is something special. Who you got for today?
This guy.
Yeah, this guy wins for today.
I'm going to prove a point. I'm going to rob this bank and prove a point. Yeah, he proved a point. You won on What Is Wrong With You.
Yeah, he proved that he is a complete moron. I guess maybe that's the point he was going for. That is our winner for today in What Is Wrong With You. We've got to take a quick break. We'll come back, recap the college football weekend that was here on 580 Sports Talk.
We're back on 580 Sports Talk. Brendan here with you on Monday afternoon. Thanks so much for joining us.
My
camera is back as well. It crapped out for a second, but don't worry, we're back. One quick note before we get to some other notes from around college football this weekend, because there was a lot to get to, and we'll hit on as many of the biggest points as we can here in a second. But my wife was listening to the show today. Hi, honey. She says in a text to me, as we were talking about KU and K-State earlier, I'm sorry, Tim Brando was doing the Sunflower Showdown? And I said, sadly, yes.
And she adds, haha, that's the worst thing I've heard.
I think most people agree with that.
He's not real popular, and he doesn't prepare, and he's not the play-by-play broadcaster he used to be, and he's openly antagonistic and openly hostile towards programs and fans on social media. I mean, what's not to like?
And sometimes players.
Yeah.
It's a real weird beef with Adrian Martinez. We got hurt against TCU. Why? Come on, Fox.
I don't know. Yeah, it's time. It's time to put him out to pasture. It just is. Not everybody gets to do this forever.
Yeah, no kidding. All right, we've got plenty to get you from the college football weekend. Let's go rapid fire through some of these big headlines. We got to start with TCU Baylor. Wow.
What were you yelling at the television when TCU ran the ball on that third down? Because I can't tell you what I was yelling at the television because I thought they had blown it.
So I was in the press box at KU.
Yeah.
I was waiting for our kickoff. So I hadn't said, I was just kind of murmuring. And for some people around me, I went, oh my God, what are they doing? Then I said, oh, fire drill. And I said that kind of loud. And they got it to work. Apparently that's how they always practice it, is run into the fire drill, which is bizarre, but I guess if that's what you're used to, that's what you do. I can't believe it worked.
I can't believe it worked either.
That it did.
That's what I did. My wife was downstairs with me. I was watching that game, and I did. I said, "Oh my God, they're going to blow it." There were a couple of other choice words in there that I won't repeat, but the gist of it was they just blew it. They're going to blow it because, like, how often does that work? I've seen that not work way more often than I've seen it work.
I believe, if I remember correctly, I said to myself, all right, you can't center the ball here. And then they ran and I thought, okay, well, this is over. Like, that's not going to work.
They don't have enough time.
I cannot believe it worked.
It worked a treat. I'll tell you what, because I guess the thought process, too, is like Baylor's not going to call a timeout. They're not going to help you out. And the flip side of that is they're not going to freeze your kicker. So your kicker just goes right out and just does it. Like, no time to think. Just take your steps, kick the ball. Don't worry about thinking. Just kick. And so I get it. But, man, it so rarely works. And to see it pulled off like that, I mean, it's a testament. We have talked about TCU all season. Their offense, the explosive players that they have, two of whom did not finish that game. Kean Miller got dinged. Quentin Johnson got dinged, which you hate to see with a team that's, 2 wins away from representing this league in the college football playoff. But Sonny Dykes is really good. They are a well-coached football team. The last year of Gary Patterson, it felt like just the message was stale. Like, it was starting to fall on deaf ears. It was time for Gary Patterson to go. It was time for something new. And, man, the message is received by those players. They are on song.
Yep.
They are a very well-coached, well-disciplined football team. And they deserve a ton of credit. I know nobody wants to admit that they're good. I know people are mad that they're still undefeated. They figured they'd lose by now so we could talk about more SEC teams in the playoff or whatever people want. But, sorry. Sorry to the haters and the losers, but TCU's really, really good.
And it's the same stupid argument every year that, they're just going to get blown out by Georgia. Okay, so?
Yeah.
Michigan was awesome last year, and they are in one of your chosen conferences. What happened to them when they played Georgia? So what? You want to get there. You want to be a part of it.
Give yourself the chance.
I think that argument is stupid. It is pants on head stupid. The other game of the week was, I think, USC versus UCLA. That game lived up to all the hype. It was awesome. DTR was really good. Caleb Williams was really good. Both teams miraculously made a stop late in the game, which was almost unthinkable. And the Pac-12 does still have playoff hopes. It is still clinging to them. But if USC beats Notre Dame and then beats probably Oregon, in all likelihood Oregon, coming up in the Pac-12 championship game, and TCU loses, I think USC is going to get in.
You check your... The thing about USC that is so impressive is Caleb Williams and just a bunch of NFL wide receivers. Like, all those guys look like they're going to play on Sunday. And Caleb Williams is a magician, man. I loved that game. That was the most fun game of Saturday to me because DTR, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, left it all on the field for UCLA. He was terrific. Caleb Williams was just one moment of magic better. That was a really fun game. That was as good a college football game as there's been all season. And USC, really good in what has been a surprisingly excellent Pac-12 this year. That's a really good team. And yeah, they need somebody to lose. And I think they probably get in. If they win out, I think they're in. I think they get in over whoever loses Michigan, Ohio State.
That's certainly possible.
Because your closing argument for USC will have been beat UCLA, beat Notre Dame.
Who's playing well.
Who has played well down the stretch. and then beat another ranked team. Looks like it's going to be Oregon.
Probably Oregon.
In the Pac-12 championship game. And that will be a stronger finishing argument than either Michigan or Ohio State, I think, can make.
And speaking of those two teams, because we'll get through these rapid fire here, everybody in the top four got a scare. TCU had to execute the fire drill field goal to perfection and not a single percent less to beat Baylor. Georgia never really thought they were going to lose, but Kentucky, who has been an extreme disappointment this year, at least kept it close. Didn't allow them to score at all, which they've been doing pretty much at will. Ohio State nearly lost, and you could make an argument probably should have lost to Maryland. The execution at the end of the game by the Terps was not great. And Michigan did not play well at all against Illinois and still barely escaped with a win.
Yeah, that was Michigan having trouble moving the ball against that really good Illinois defense, and then Blake Corum got hurt, and he's been their offense. They went with J.J. McCarthy at quarterback this year over Cade McNamara, the guy that won him the Big Ten last year. I thought that was the right move. I still kind of think it is because the upside is so big, but McCarthy has let them down in the passing game this year. They're just not as good in the passing game as you thought they were going to be with him, and they're pretty good in the running game, but when Corum went out, it was a struggle for them. But look, nobody's flawless. Nobody plays A-plus football for 12 weeks. It doesn't happen. You have to find a way to win the close ones. For Georgia this year, it's been finding a way at Mizzou, finding a way at Kentucky. For Michigan, it was finding a way at home against Illinois, who's a pretty solid team. You just have to find a way to win and get over the line and get into the playoff, and those teams have done that. The Michigan-Ohio State matchup is fascinating because I think Michigan, if they impose their will on the game, can beat Ohio State, but are they going to be able to do that without Blake Corum? Real quick, want to address this from the Big O Tires text line. It's a good question from the 785. Talking about the fire drill field goal. Since TCU is technically making substitutions, shouldn't Baylor have been able to substitute and take their time and run out the clock? There is a rule written in the bylaws of football that closes that loophole because we've seen it. We see it a lot in K-State games, right? They're really good at slow playing the substitutions and forcing other teams to call timeout because when the offense substitutes, the defense by rule gets to substitute and the official holds play. They stand over the center and they don't let the center snap the ball until those substitutions are complete. The exception is on a fourth down in a field goal situation when it is written in the rules. And I don't have the rule in front of me, but the rule is that the expectation of the defense should be that the field goal is coming. And so their expectation should be to hustle their own field goal unit onto the field. So that loophole is closed.
Well explained. Yeah. Because in theory, I think a lot of people had that same thought, and especially around here, probably because we've seen it with K-State so many times.
Yeah.
But thankfully, that's one of the few good extra rules in there, and thanks from the text line as well. That is why TCU was able to get that taken care of. We've got to take a break here for our national and local news. We've got half an hour left on the show, so we will get you a look around the sports world with our 580 Sports Talk headlines next after our news. hour left on 580 Sports Talk today. Brendan Dworzinski and Dan Lucero here with you. We are off early due to K-State men's basketball opening up the Cayman Islands Classic against Rhode Island tonight. I checked this earlier via KenPom. K-State is in the mid-60s in the Ken Pomeroy numbers. Low 60s now. They're 63rd. Rhode Island is 174th. They've really fallen off over the last few years. No more Fats Russell. Fats Russell ain't walking through that door.
No, he's not.
K-State should win tonight. So, as far as 580 Sports Talk scheduling goes, if K-State does in fact win tonight over Rhode Island, as they should, we will be back for a nearly full show tomorrow. We'll be on from 3 until 5:30. If K-State loses tonight, shockingly, then we will not have a show tomorrow. We will be off because K-State will play at 4 o'clock. Pregame will begin at 3. No time for 580 Sports Talk. So that is the lineup, the potential outcomes for tomorrow. As for Wednesday's show, Dan will be off. Dan's taking off for the holiday, so enjoy Colorado.
I will.
I will be on with you for any combination of time. If K-State wins tonight and tomorrow, I'll be on with you from 3 to 5:30. If K-State wins tonight, loses tomorrow, we will not have a show, period, on Tuesday. If they lose tonight, doesn't really matter. We'll have a full show 3 to 6 coming up on Wednesday. So you'll find out as soon as we find out when we will be on for the next 2 days. We are off Thursday for Thanksgiving, Friday for the holiday as well. So we hope you enjoy your long weekend. If you do get the long weekend, if you have to work, well, enjoy the remaining sports programming for the weekend here on 580 WIBW. We'll have VSiN, who will be bringing you the content throughout the sports radio weekend. So in this final half hour of the show, which is actually now down to about 22 minutes, we'll get you a final word and we'll get you our 580 Sports Talk headlines brought to you by Blue Dot of Kansas. Go visit our friends online at bluedotkansas.com. They can make sure your house is nice and comfortable as it continues to get chillier and chillier outside as we approach the winter months. And Dan, my first headline for today, we're going to go to the NFL. It has been the most talked about headline around the league so far on this Monday. Zach Wilson is in some hot water after sucking the joint up yesterday against the Patriots. He was dog water yesterday.
Horrendous.
They had more punts than completions.
Yeah, they did.
That sucks.
9 completions, 10 punts.
That is so bad. And then after the game, Zach Wilson was asked if he felt as though he let down the defense, who played extremely well for the Jets. They've got a very good defense. And Zach Wilson, in one word, said no.
Immediately. Not like he sat to ponder the weight of his words. He was just like, nah, man. No.
And there were also some rumors. Who knows how true these are, but there were some rumors that he was kind of acting a little arrogant post-game in the locker room. Like his you-know-what didn't stink all that much. Buddy, you again had more punts than completions in the game. Well, his play and his reaction after the game have not sat well with head coach Robert Saleh, who said today that the quarterback job is up in the air for next week against the Bears.
It's important or interesting to note that he said that after being over an hour late for his media availability today.
That's bad. We think it's bad when Andy Reid's like 15 minutes late. Robert Saleh being over an hour late is really bad. And said, hey, they don't know who's going to start. He said everything is on the table. That could be Zach Wilson keeps the job. That could be Mike White gets the call. That could be Joe Flacco gets the call. But I'm going to tell you this, Dan. If Zach Wilson gets benched for this game, his career in New York is over. The Bears defense is so bad. It is awful. They can't get pressure on the quarterback because they've traded their only good front 7 players. They can't cover well. They're super young. Their defense is awful. If you're saying this situation is so untenable, we can't even give Zach Wilson an opportunity to bounce back against one of the league's worst defenses, then it is over, and they will be looking for a quarterback this year. You cannot come back from that. At least optically, you can't do it, and frankly, as a franchise, I don't think they will do it.
I'm considering joining our NFL insider, Matt Verderame, in a class action lawsuit against the NFL and the networks for the games that were televised in our area yesterday. We got Jets, Pats, followed by on Fox, Raiders, Broncos. That was obscene. It made me fall out of love with the sport of football. When I watched Chargers, Chiefs, it was like a completely different sport was being played on my television. It was so bad. So I say that by way of exposition. I watched a lot of that Patriots Jets game because it's football. I'm gonna slurp that garbage up on a Sunday, man. It's what we do. It's not that, oh man, Zach Wilson was up against a really tough pass defense, just had a bad day at the office. No, man, he can't throw a quick game. Like, he can't get the ball out on like screen passes, quick hitters. He's overthrowing receivers in the flats. He's overthrowing receivers over the middle. He's underthrowing guys on corner routes. I don't think there's a throw that Zach Wilson can make.
No.
And this was the number 2 pick in the draft. Again, we have said on this program many times that the 2020 college football season, the COVID year, was a lie. That everything that happened in 2020 was false. Indiana being good at football, false. Iowa State being a national title contender, false. Michigan being bummy, false. Carl Durrell being the man at Colorado, false. Lots of falsehoods coming out of the 2020 COVID college football season. Maybe none bigger than Zach Wilson is the right guy to lead a franchise at quarterback.
Oh, man, even KU went winless that year. How much does that suck? Fake year where you could just make up your own record. Be like, oh, yeah, we went 6-3 and had a game canceled. Like, you could do that. Who would argue? Be like, oh, yeah, maybe that happened. No, KU still lost every game.
So that now makes 2 of the last 3 drafts that the Jets have taken a quarterback in the top 3, and it is undisputed. 2 of the last 4 drafts, sorry. It is undisputed. It is indisputable. They have swung and missed twice. Because Sam Darnold not even with the team anymore.
No. Sam Darnold is the 3rd stringer on a different team.
And again, this is not Zach Wilson is struggling or, Zach Wilson is having a little difficulty with a new offensive coordinator or whatever you want to say. No, he's bad.
He's bad.
He can't make throws. He's not an NFL caliber quarterback. And I think that was fully exposed by the Patriots yesterday. And I think he's done in that town. Like, they could, even if they play him on Sunday, he's done in that town. The Jets know that is not going to work because they have assembled a roster that's good enough to make the playoffs, even with him stinking out the joint. Because he stunk out the joint all year. This is new.
Mm-hmm.
And yet they're 6-4. Like, if they get hot, like, that's why they need to make the change. Like, you can't just ride with this. You got a chance to make the playoffs. You got a chance to get people fired up about Jets football. Give White Mike a shot. Give Joe Flacco a shot.
White Mike. The Jets' losses this year, by the way, they lost to the Ravens. They lost by 15 in week 1. They lost to the Bengals by 15 in week 3. They also had, and I got to go pull this up, 2 one-score losses to the Patriots. They lost by 5 at home. They lost by 7 yesterday. I'm going to throw out a name for you who very well might be cut by his current team at the end of this season.
Jimmy Garoppolo.
Derek Carr. If Derek Carr is on this team, they're 8-2.
Yeah, it might be.
With that defense, with just base-level quarterback competence, this team is 8-2. Yeah, honestly, you could probably throw that name out for the other New York team as well and say they might be like 2nd Super Bowl favorites in the NFC right now. I don't know how realistic it is. That has been floated about on social media that, hey, the Raiders stink. That Carr, he can easily be cut to save a ton of money and with very little dead money at any point. He might be a free agent at the end of this year, which would also be very funny. Because the Raiders made this whole thing about getting Adams so that he could play with Carr and then cutting Derek Carr. But beside the point, like, just competent quarterback play, and the Jets might have a chance to win their division. But all their options stink, and their former number 2 overall pick is awful.
Yep. Swing and a miss, and you keep whiffing on quarterbacks like that. It can make it really, really hard to sustain success. So be fascinating to see what goes on, but certainly it doesn't seem like Wilson has a whole lot of backers in the locker room, particularly if the reporting coming out after yesterday's game is true. So we'll see where that goes, but yeah, he's done in that town, regardless of who starts at quarterback for the Jets on Sunday. First headline for me in our Blue Dot of Kansas headlines. We referred to it at the top of the show because it was just concluding at the top of the show. The United States took the pitch in Qatar at the World Cup.
Boy.
This afternoon. First game of the group stage for Team USA as they took on Wales in what is considered the swing game in the group. The United States not favored against England, favored against Iran. Would have loved to have gotten 3 points against the Dragons of Wales, but unfortunately, the USMNT couldn't close the deal. They got a 36-minute goal from Timothy Weah, led 1-0 at the intermission, but Walker Zimmerman, the center back, gave away a penalty in the late stages, and Gareth Bale's penalty in the 82nd minute leveled the score, and that's how things ended on level terms. 1-1, the final score. Each team gets a point in the group and are tied for second behind England, who thrashed Iran 6-2 earlier today. Tough loss for Team USA. They are back at it on Friday, taking on England in their second group stage game. And FanDuel wants to get you in on the action when America takes the pitch, because when you bet on Team USA in group play, all customers get free bets back if they don't win. All tournament long, FanDuel has all your favorite bet types, including some exclusive to soccer. And just like any other sport, you can combine bets for chance at a bigger payday with a same-game parlay. However you want to play, be sure to back the red, white, and blue, because all customers get free bets back if Team USA doesn't win. Just sign up with my promo code Lucero if you don't already have an account, and make every moment more with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. You must be 21 and present in Kansas. Refund issued is non-withdrawable free bets. It expires 7 days after receipt. Max free bet ranging from $5 to $100. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. FanDuel is offering online sports wagering in Kansas under an agreement with Kansas Star Casino, LLC. Gambling problem? Getting help is your best bet. Call 1-800-522-4700 or visit ksgamblinghelp.com.
Next headline for me, I'm going to go back to the NFL and go back to some more very funny personnel moves. The Denver Broncos waived running back Melvin Gordon today.
That'll fix it.
After he fumbled again yesterday. On one hand, you're right. Like this, what does this actually repair? On the other hand, this probably should have happened weeks ago. Like this.
It should have happened.
Man.
It should have happened after the Chargers game when he was effectively benched at halftime and spent the entire second half on camera rolling his eyes and staring at the heavens and
pouting,
complaining to Jerry Jeudy and just pouting. Like I didn't understand why they didn't just drop the axe then. I guess he had to fumble one more time in a crucial situation, which he did yesterday. I don't know if he would have gotten the first down on that 3rd and 1 inside the 5 or not. I don't know if he would have scored. He wouldn't have scored on the play, but I don't know if Denver would have scored a touchdown or had to settle for a field goal or not. But he did fumble. Denver did have to settle for a field goal that got blocked. So instead of taking a 17-7 lead into the locker room, because the Broncos are not allowed to score more than 16 points in the football game, just not allowed, they ended up only leading by 10-7 at the half. They end up losing in overtime 22-16. Do you know that if the Denver Broncos had scored exactly 18 points in every single one of their games this year, they would be tied for the division lead with the Kansas City Chiefs? They would be 8-2 if they had scored exactly 18 points in all 10 of their games. They are 3-7.
That's why it's the best sport, best league.
Cutting Melvin Gordon ain't going to fix that. The backfield now for the Broncos, if you're curious, Latavius Murray and Marlon Mack.
I've just discovered today when this news broke that Marlon Mack is on the Broncos. I did not remember that one bit. By the way, Melvin Gordon, in parts of 3 seasons with the Broncos, really just over 2.5 years, he ended up with, do you know how many fumbles? Exactly.
I watched a compilation of all of them on Twitter earlier today. I believe it was 8 or 9.
12. He had 12 fumbles, according to Pro Football Reference, in 41 games with the Broncos. That is a fumble for every, let me do the math here real quick, less than 3.5 games. So if you fumbled in week 1, by sometime in week 5, you would have fumbled again. All season long. And for 3 years.
The compilation that I watched was so incredibly funny because all of the fumbles were like maximum costly. Fumbles at the goal line, fumbles getting returned for touchdowns. I think the exact count, and somebody had it, there were 3 fumbles on the goal line. There were 4 fumbles that occurred in the red zone. 3 of them got returned for touchdowns. like back-breaking touchdowns. Like, remember last year when they were up 1 on the Chiefs and driving, and Gordon fumbles and it gets returned for the game-winning touchdown by Nick Bolton? Like, this happened all the time.
It was very funny.
It was so funny. It was the funniest. It's like an ongoing bit. It was like watching a Simpsons episode and they have an itchy and scratchy bit episode within the show.
We do have a texter from the 785 who says somebody will pick him up. Yeah, I do agree with that. He'll go somewhere. When he can hold on to the ball, he is still at least a decent NFL running back. The problem is he can't do that.
Yeah.
But no, someone will pick him up. I'm sure they will.
Yeah. If he's capable of still being a good teammate, which I had some questions about there in Denver, he must have been. I mean, they must have hashed it out with him and Nathaniel Hackett to have him stay on the team after that debacle in Los Angeles. But yeah, I think somebody probably pick him up, I would imagine. My last headline, Blue Dot of Kansas headlines here. Kansas receives a first-place vote in the newest AP Top 25 men's college basketball poll today. They come in ranked 3rd in the country behind North Carolina and Houston. Texas got 5 first-place votes after they annihilated Gonzaga in Austin over the weekend. They are 4th. Virginia also receiving a first-place vote, coming in at 5th. Gonzaga, Baylor, Duke, Arkansas, and Creighton rounding out the top 10. Creighton with an impressive and convincing win over Texas Tech earlier today in Maui. Indiana, Michigan State, Auburn, Arizona, Kentucky, 11 through 15. Illinois, San Diego State, Alabama, UCLA, UConn, 16 through 20. Texas Tech, Tennessee, Maryland, Purdue, Iowa, rounding out the top 25.
I think that sounds about right for KU after that big win over Duke.
We didn't get around to it. Friday night, they were less than convincing against Southern Utah. Southern Utah played much harder, and KU kind of seemed annoyed by the fact that they had to exert anything to beat a very pesky and very annoying and kind of good Southern Utah team.
I didn't see any of the game live because I was doing Washburn basketball in Kansas City, and I looked at my Twitter. I had just tweeted out like, "Oh, it's the under 4 timeout. Washburn, down by whatever." I look at my Twitter and I say, "What? Why are all these KU accounts freaking out? Like, what went wrong?" And I looked at the score. It reminded me of 2 years ago when KU played UTEP.
Yeah,
that's what that felt like, and I thought, "Oh dear." I also was lucky enough to not have to watch that one. I had sub-state basketball that night, so I missed that disaster. Let's never speak of that game again. Southern Utah happened. We move on.
Yes, it was very characteristic, though. Like the big offensive play, Grady Dick 3-pointer. The big defensive play, DeJuan Harris. The big hustle play, KJ Adams. Like that's that. They know who's going to make the play for them at the end of the game, and those guys made the plays that helped them get really more than get the win, avoid the loss.
We've got a K-State fan from the 402 who texted in, "KU are frauds, don't forget that." 2 quick points. 1, appreciate the interaction, but point number 1, frauds don't usually win national championships. And 2, the FBI determined that KU was defrauded, not the other way around. KU was a victim. Let's remember, the Federal Bureau of Investigations told us that KU is a victim. That did happen. That is on record from the FBI. Obviously, we're just messing around. Appreciate you guys texting in on the Big O Tires text line. Those are our 580 Sports Talk headlines, brought to you, as always, by our good friends at Blue Dot of Kansas. Go check them out online at bluedotkansas.com. We're going to take one more quick timeout. When we come back on the other side of this break, we will wrap up this abbreviated edition of 580 Sports Talk with the final word. up 580 Sports Talk on this Victory Monday with Brendan and Dan. It's time for a final word. We're off early due to K-State hoops, so Dan, let's get to it.
Final word for me today. My wife and I like to watch TV. It's something that we enjoy doing together. We have all kinds of shows we enjoy watching, lots of, crime of the week, police, procedural, drama type shows, big Law and Order fans. I like to watch Abbott Elementary. Sometimes that one hits a little too close to home for my wife, who is a teacher. But the best thing I watch on television on a week in, week out basis in the fall is the Kansas City Chiefs. They are the best entertainment on television for my money. Even though I'm sure some Chiefs fans would like a blowout win here and there, no, I love the drama, and I love the knowing that in the end, the good guys are going to solve the crime. Patrick Mahomes is going to solve the Charger defense and going to win another football game. The good guys winning in the end. They are the best show on television, the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah, my final word pertains to the victorious Kansas City Chiefs as well. And the fact that there is no longer a 3-team group at the top of the NFL, in my opinion, for who the best teams are. It is the best team right now. It is the Kansas City Chiefs. They should be favored to win the Super Bowl at this point. They should have the favorite to win NFL MVP. If there was ever anyone who was going to break that streak of MVPs not winning a Super Bowl, it'd be this version of Patrick Mahomes. He is playing out of his mind. I said it to Fulton last night on our live show, instant recapping last night's win, and Matt Verderame alluded to it earlier too. There are 3 stretches I think of for the best of Patrick Mahomes' career. The first half of his first season as a starter, when the whole world thought, oh my God, where'd this guy come from? The next one would be the run to the Super Bowl in 2019 when he was just out of his mind in the postseason. And number 3 is right now. This is historic stuff. So pay attention because it's not going to last forever. So enjoy it while it is here. That's how good he's been. That's how good the Chiefs have been during this 4-game winning streak. That does it today for 580 Sports Talk. We're off for K-State hoops. If K-State wins today, we're back from 3 to 5:30 tomorrow. If they lose tonight, we've got no show tomorrow. We'll know when you know. So pay attention to K-State hoops tonight. Hopefully we'll get to talk to you all about K-State hoops and so much more coming up on tomorrow's show. If we do have a show, we'll talk to Michael Swain. We've got more Chiefs to get to and so much more. So until then, whenever we talk to you next, for Dan Lucero, I'm Brendan Brzezinski. K-State is next. You've been listening to 580 Sports Talk.